Hello there. It's time. New week. Not a new text. Yeah, that sounded better in my head. I've already started the morning well by pouring water all over my laptop, which of course is something that the government will be doing in a few weeks when there's an inquiry into how they handle the coronavirus. But thank you very much. A little bit of politics. It's a political text, Inspector Calls, so I'm justified. So, good to see you all. Good to be aware of you all, and hello to all you. Johan as well. Hello there. So, hi everyone. Now then, we had a bit of a bombshell at the end of Friday, didn't we? With Mrs. Burling, it turns out, has turned down help for the girl. The girl came to a charity commission, and she was pregnant as well, and Mrs. Burling knows all this, but because she thought she was cheeky, because she gave the false name Mrs. Burling, remember, people gave false names in her situation, Inspector established that quite early on, she turned down the help, and the girl kills herself. This is 2 weeks before she kills herself, and she says that the father should be made an example of. Remember that it was sort of seen as scandalous if you're not married and you have a child. The father, well, the girl said she didn't accept an offer of money from the father because she suspected that that money was stolen. So she said the father's to blame and he should be humiliated and made an example of. She's the last one to realise, of course, that the father is Eric. Oops. So, Eric arrives just at the right spot. Should we pick it up, chaps? See what happens? I reckon today and tomorrow we'll be done. And then maybe I should run a poll tomorrow to say what should I read next, but that's a different matter. I might mention that at the end. Okay, so Eric enters into the room. He's standing just inside the room. The others are staring at him. And he crosses to the inspector. Hi, Dylan. You know, don't you? Yes, we know. Erica, I can't believe it. There must be some mistake. You don't know what we've been saying. It's a good job for him he doesn't, isn't it? Why? Because Mother's been busy blaming everything on the young man who got this girl into trouble and saying he shouldn't escape and should be made an example of. That's enough, Sheila. You haven't made it any easier for me, have you, Mother? But I didn't know it was you. I never dreamt. Besides, you're not that type. You don't get drunk. Of course he does. I told you he did. You told her? Why, you little sneak? No, that's not fair, Eric. I could have told her months ago, but of course I didn't. And I told her tonight because I knew everything was coming out. It was simply bound to come out tonight. So I thought she might as well know in advance. I've already been through it, don't forget. Sheila, I simply don't understand your attitude. Neither do I. If you'd any sense of loyalty. Just a minute, Mr. Burling. There'll be plenty of time when I'm gone for you all to adjust your family relationships. Now I must hear what your son has to tell me. I'd be obliged if you'll let us get on without any further interruptions. So, I just draw your attention to that little Mrs. Burling comment. Oh, she's awful, isn't she awful? She's awful. When, Sheila tells Eric, well, Mum's just basically said it's your fault and you should be made an example of. And Mrs. Burling, when Eric says, oh, thanks, Mrs. Burling says, but I didn't know it was you. Again, that selfish thing. Morals only apply to other people. We stick up for each other, look after ourselves, and other people, I'll judge the working class, but we're the good people. We can't actually do anything wrong. You think about it, people are like that, aren't they? People are like that. Tend to be very judgmental of others, but not necessarily judging themselves by the same standards. Right, so the inspector is now going to interrogate Eric. Do you see what I mean about the ease of revising this? it's split into 5 bits, isn't it? Burling tells his bit, then Sheila, then Gerald, then Mrs. Burling, then Eric. It's very, very, very structured, and that's great for revising, isn't it? And if you've got character questions, well, you know exactly where to look for an awful lot of what they're saying. Hello, Dominica, as well. And oh my gosh, Ash! Yes, brings back memories, he says. Studying it over 16 years ago. Oh man, yeah, I tell you what. Action replay. And I still look just the same. Anyway, less of that. Right, so the inspector's going to turn his attention to Eric now. Can I have a drink first? No! Yes. And Burling looks like he's going to go nuts. I know, he's your son and this is your house. But look at him. All right, go on. And there's quite an interesting little stage direction here. Eric goes for a whiskey, and his whole manner of handling the decanter and the drink shows his familiarity with quick, heavy drinking. You know, Burling and Mrs. Burling have convinced themselves he's their naive young little boy, and they don't believe that he's a drinker. And now they look at him, and he's there. You know, it's not like he doesn't handle the booze literally like he's a chap taking his first drink. You know, he knows. You know, do you see what I mean? He knows how to handle it. The others watch him narrowly. You know, they're all judging him, aren't they? I understand a lot of things now that I didn't understand before. Don't start on that. I want to get on. When did you first meet this girl? One night last November. Where did you meet her? In the Palace Bar. I'd been there an hour or so with 2 or 3 chaps. I was a bit squiffy. What happened then? I began talking to her and stood her a few drinks. I was rather far gone by the time we had to go. Was she drunk too? She told me afterwards that she was a bit, chiefly because she'd not had much to eat that day. Had she gone there to solicit? No, she hadn't. She wasn't that sort, really. Well, I suppose she didn't know what to do. There were some women who wanted her to go there. I never quite understood about that. You went with her to her lodgings that night? Yes, I insisted, it seems. I'm not very clear about it. But afterwards she told me she didn't want me to go in, but that, well, I was in that state when one easily turns nasty, and I threatened to make a row. So she let you in? Yes, and that's when it happened. I didn't even remember. That's the hellish part. Oh my God, how stupid it all is. Okay, so we're talking about responsibility. So this is not Eric abusing power in the way of Burling, who runs the factory and therefore can just sack people however he feels like it, or Sheila abusing power in the sense of getting someone sacked because she doesn't like the way they looked at her. But it is a reckless sense of lack of consequence. I'm a spoiled little rich boy, and I'm going to go to town. I get smashed, and then I'll do whatever I want, and there'll be no consequences for me because I'm one of the golden people. That sort of thing, isn't it? Yeah. So he meets her in the bar, same bar that Gerald saw her. There's an implication there that she's been forced back into prostitution, although the inspector did specifically say, had she gone there to solicit, which means, had she gone there as a prostitute? And Eric says no, and we may be wrong, of course. He does say she wasn't that sort. She isn't that sort in the sense of, you know, how we might decide to stereotype a prostitute, and yet she can be desperate enough to, as we've already seen with Gerald. But they're both a bit drunk. He walks her home and then threatens to make a right noise outside if she doesn't let him into the house, and they have sex. This is not rape. Priestley's not trying to say that, but you know, Eric is extremely reckless in his behaviour here, and Eric is, well, you know, a drunk in the streets threatening to make a row if she doesn't let him in. That's not good, is it? So certainly reckless behaviour with no care for the consequences and how it might affect other people. Oh, Eric, how could you? Sheila, take your mother along to the drawing room. But I want to... You heard what I said. Go on, Sybil. So Sheila takes Mrs. Burling out. Sexist, isn't it? And Burling closes the door and comes in. When did you see her again? About a fortnight afterwards. By appointment? No, and I couldn't remember her name or where she lived. It was all very vague, but I happened to see her again in the Palace Bar. More drinks? Yes, this time I wasn't so bad. But you went to her room again. Yes, and this time we talked a bit. She told me something about herself, and I talked too. Told her my name and what I did. And you made love again? Yes. I wasn't in love with her or anything, but I liked her. She was pretty and a good sport. So you had to go to bed with her? Well, I'm old enough to be married, aren't I? And I'm not married, and I hate all these fat old tarts around the town, the ones I see some of your respectable friends with. I don't want any of that talk from you. And I don't want any of it from either of you. Settle it afterwards. Did you arrange to see each other after that? Yes, and the next time, or the time after that, she told me she thought she was going to have a baby. She wasn't quite sure, and then she was. Of course. She was worried? Yes, and so was I. I was in a hell of a state about it. Did she suggest that you ought to marry her? No, she didn't want me to marry her. Said I didn't love her and all that. In a way, she treated me as if I were a kid, though I was nearly as old as she was. So what did you propose to do? Well, she hadn't a job and didn't feel like trying again for one, and she'd no money left, so I insisted on giving her enough money to keep her going until she refused to take any more. How much did you give her altogether? Suppose about £50 all told. £50 on top of drinking and going round the town? Where'd you get £50 from? That's my question too. I got it from the office. My office? Yes. You mean you stole the money? Not really. What do you mean, not really? Eric doesn't reply because now Mrs. Burling and Sheila have come back. This isn't my fault. I'm sorry, Arthur, but I simply couldn't stay in there. I had to know what's happening. Well, I can tell you what's happening. He's admitted he was responsible for the girl's condition, and now he's telling us he supplied her with money he stole from the office. Eric, you stole money? No, not really. I intended to pay it back. You've heard that story before. How could you have paid it back? I'd have managed somehow. I had to have some money. I don't understand how you can take as much as that out of the office without somebody knowing. There were some small accounts to collect, and I asked for cash. Gave the firm's receipt and then kept the money, eh? Yes. You must give me a list of those accounts. I've got to cover this up as soon as I can, you damn fool. Why didn't you come to me when you found yourself in this mess? Because you're not the kind of father a chap could go to when he's in trouble. That's why. Don't talk to me like that. The trouble is, you've been spoilt. And my trouble is that I haven't much time. You'll be able to divide the responsibility between you when I'm gone. Just jumping back a second there. Now then. So, Eric, the girl becomes pregnant. Eric is the father. The girl does not want to marry him. Again, the girl is just more sensible than the other characters. She realises that that's not a goer, is it? You know, she can't marry the heir to the Burling fortune. That's not gonna be feasible. So he says he wants to give her money. Now, £50 in those days is considerably more than it is now. I'm sure there's many better examples of this, but if I could give you this one. When think about football matches, I mean, to get a seat in the stand at the racecourse on the Mould Road side, it's like 19 quid, something like that, and that's like 5th division football, low level. When I was a kid, Wrexham were in the sort of much higher. and that stand used to be a different building, and it was made of wood, and they had to close it down. But for years they didn't replace it, and so they had the prices still there on the outside of the stand, and it always sticks in my head. And then to sit there was £2. Now that stand was shut in 1985, so £2 then, should we say? I know it's a very rough idea, but what was £2 in 1985 is £19 now. And that's only going back to 1985. This is going back to 1912. So £50 in those days is a good chunk of cash. So Eric hasn't got that sort of money, so he takes it from Burling's office. And what he does is, obviously when you're running a business, you're going to owe people money, other people are going to owe you money. And so there are some small debtors, so companies that owe Burling small amounts of money. So Eric goes around them saying he's representing the business, and he collects the debt. He's got a receipt book which he signs on behalf of the company to hand over. So the people paying up think they're paying their debts, but actually the money's going to Eric and not the company. Obviously, ultimately that will get found out, wouldn't it? Eric said to him, well, I would give it back, and there's no reason to think he wouldn't. Although he is a bit wild and reckless, isn't he? So again, this is someone not thinking about the consequences. This is somebody who has got a girl pregnant and then is not really going to stick by her as such, and is hoping that the £50 will be fine now. Oh, to be fair, she appreciates and has told him, you can't stick by me, can you? You're not going to marry me. That interesting line there, and Burling goes nuts, of course, you've embezzled my company. And Eric, he says, why didn't you come to me when you found yourself in this mess? And Eric tellingly, and this is very quotable, says, because you're not the kind of father a chap could go to when he's in trouble. I think that's true, isn't it? Okay, but anyway, the inspector does not want any of this rubbish. He wants to get on with his job, doesn't he? Just one last question, that's all. The girl discovered that the money you were giving her was stolen, didn't she? Yes. That was the worst of it, of all. She wouldn't take any more, and she didn't want to see me again. Yeah. How did you know that? Did she tell you? No. She told me nothing. I never spoke to her. She told Mother. Sheila! Well, Eric has to know. She told you. Did she come here? But then she couldn't have done that. She didn't even know I lived here. What happened? Mrs. Burling is distressed and shakes her head, but doesn't reply. So the special effects are pretty good, huh? Come on, it just looked like that. Tell me what happened. I'll tell you. She went to your mother's committee for help. Your mother refused that help. Then you killed her. She came to you to protect me, and you turned her away. Yes, and you killed her, and the child she'd have had too. My child, your own grandchild, you killed them both. Damn you, damn you. Mrs. Burling's very distressed now. No, Eric, please, I didn't know it. I didn't understand. He's almost threatening her now. You don't understand anything. You never did. You never even tried. You... Eric, don't. Why, you hysterical little young fool. Get back, or I'll... He's stepping in between them. Whoa. Right then, Jamie. So if everyone's responsible for Eva Smith's death, how is Edna responsible? She ain't responsible. She just Edna. Edna just is. The Edna abides. No, Edna's just somebody who opens and closes doors for rich people, okay? No. Remember, everyone taking responsibility, the idea of that is that... Okay, we got me all philosophical now. Okay, in the sense of the play, you've got these rich people are all responsible in some way. You can see they've all contributed, haven't they, to her. Eric said she didn't want to look for a job anymore. It's like she's had so many knockbacks, so many bad things happen to her. She sounds like she's sort of kind of given up a bit. Yeah? So these people have all been knocking her all the time. But in another way, philosophical bit coming up, in another way, yeah, it is everyone, isn't it? Priestley's also saying everyone's responsible for everybody. So in a broader sense, we all should be treating people well. because we don't know the consequences of not treating people well. And if we don't do that, society will collapse. And he's right, isn't he? If we treat everyone well, we get a much greater sense of community, people are happier, and things go well, and you're not going to have conflict or war. So he has a point, doesn't he? So in that sense, everyone's responsible for each other. It doesn't mean that Edna's done anything wrong, though. Yeah. That bit there, where Eric goes nuts when he finds out that his mother turned down help for the girl, it's interesting, you know. The way I deliberately gave you those stage directions. Eric's almost threatening her, goes across to her. Sheila, I didn't say, rises frightened, and Burling is furious. He intervenes, crossing to them. But it's I've seen it played in different ways. Sometimes it's just like I did that then, just shouting. I've seen it once actually where he does actually attack her and has to be pulled off her. Eric has lost it. He is livid. The girl was having his child, and okay, how responsible a father he would have been is a different question. But still, Mrs. Burling didn't help, and the girl and the baby are now dead as a result of it. And that again, this idea of us all being responsible that Jamie said, that the broader idea, Mrs. Burling saying, no, Eric, please, I didn't know, I didn't understand. Yeah, so that's just summing up that selfishness, and where you get if you don't try to put yourself in other people's shoes and look after other people. Yeah, I wouldn't have done it if I'd known it was your child, but because it's some working class girl, and probably she thinks some working class bloke who's dubbed her as child, well, then it didn't matter. It didn't matter to her what happened to that girl when she walked out that room at the time. It only matters because it turns out now it's her son's child. That's not a great attitude to have, is it? So, big inspector speech now. Everything's breaking up now. They're at each other's throats. And then it says the inspector takes charge masterfully. So like he's this great figure of authority. Now he just stops them. Stop! They all are quiet suddenly and stare at him. I don't need to know anymore. Neither do you. This girl killed herself and died a horrible death. But each of you helped to kill her. Remember that. Never forget it. And he looks carefully at each one of them. But then I don't think you ever will. Remember what you did, Mrs. Burling? You turned her away when she most needed help. You refused her even the pitiable little bit of organised charity you had in your power to grant her. Remember what you did. My God, I'm not likely to forget. You just used her for the end of a stupid, drunken evening, as if she was an animal, a thing, not a person. No, you won't forget. I know, I had her turned out of a job. I started it. You helped, but didn't start it. And then he turns to Burling, and he's savage to Burling. I think he sees Burling as Mrs. Burling as one of the worst. Yeah? You started it. She wanted 25 shillings a week instead of 22. You made her pay a heavy price for that, and now she'll make you pay a heavier price still. Look, Inspector, I'd give thousands, yes. Thousands. You're offering the money at the wrong time, Mr. Burling. He gets up as if he's finishing his session, like closing his notebook, and then looks at them all. No. I don't think any of you will forget, nor that young man Croft, though he had some affection for her at least, and made her happy for a time. Well, Eva Smith's gone. You can't do her any more harm, and you can't do her any good now, either. You can't even say, I'm sorry, Eva Smith. Sheila's quietly crying. That's the worst of it. One Eva Smith is gone, but there are millions and millions of Eva Smiths and John Smiths still left with us, with their lives, hopes and fears, their suffering, and chance of happiness, all intertwined with our lives, with what we think and say and do. We don't live alone. We're members of one body. We're responsible for each other. And I tell you that the time will soon come when if men will not learn that lesson, then they will be taught it in fire and blood and anguish. We don't live alone. Good night. And he just walks out. They're all sat in there stunned. Sheila still crying quietly. Mrs. Burling's collapsed into a chair. Eric is there, like brooding, thinking deeply. Burling is the only one who's moving around. He hears a door slam and he moves sort of towards the door and stops. He's hesitant. He doesn't know. He feels like he's got to do something, but he doesn't know what it is. He looks gloomily at the others and pours himself a drink, which he knocks back. Wow. That speech again from the inspector has been an extract question in the past. It's a theme that has come back to. It's a massive part of the play. Remember, Burling was making that speech at the start about how there's no chance of war. We all know this is wrong, of course. That's ironic, isn't it? We all know this is not true. There's no chance of war. And we're heading for a time of more and more prosperity. Of course, he means for people like them who have actually got the opportunity to take advantage of it. Technology is wonderful. The Titanic won't sink. Everything's fantastic. We're heading to an amazing future. And just look after yourself. Just look after you and your family. And take advantage of that. Because we know he's wrong. And then that's exactly the point when the inspector rings the doorbell. That's exactly the point when the inspector comes in. Now here's the point when the inspector goes out and he makes a big speech which basically is saying exactly the opposite. Yeah? So those two speeches go together, don't they? First, Priestley gives us the opinion he doesn't believe in. Then he gives the opinion he does believe in. Remember Burling was talking about all this rubbish about us all living together in a hive. Well, here's Priestley and the inspector's response. We don't live alone. We are members of one body. We are responsible for each other. And then this key line, if we don't, the time will soon come when if men will not learn that lesson, they will be taught it in fire and blood and anguish. Fire and blood and anguish. We do not live alone. Fire and blood and anguish. The inspector there predicting the First World War and the Second World War, saying if we don't learn to be decent to our fellow human being, we will have to learn that lesson the hard way. And even, think about it, he's right there in 1940, Priestley saying even after the First World War we don't learn the lesson and it happens again. And he just walks out, drops the mic, as they used to say in 2018. So stunned silence in the house for a moment. And Burling goes to Eric. You're the one to blame for this. I'll bet I am. Yeah, and you don't realise yet all you've done. More of this is bound to come out. There'll be a public scandal. Well, I don't care now. You don't seem to care about anything, but I care. I was almost certain for a knighthood in the next honours list. Oh, for God's sake, what does it matter now whether they give you a knighthood or not? Doesn't matter to you. Apparently nothing matters to you, but it may interest you to know that until every penny of that money you stole is repaid, you'll work for nothing, and there's going to be no more of this drinking round town, picking up women in a palace bar. I should think not, Eric. I'm absolutely ashamed of you. Well, I don't blame you, but don't forget I'm ashamed of you as well. Yes, both of you. Drop that! There's every excuse for what both your mother and I did. It turned out unfortunately. That's all. That's all. Well, what do you have to say? I don't know where to begin. Then don't begin. Nobody wants you to. I behaved badly too. I know I did. I'm ashamed of it. But now you're beginning all over again to pretend that nothing much has happened. Nothing much has happened? Haven't I already said? There'll be a public scandal. Unless we're lucky, and I'm the one who'll suffer. But that's not what I'm talking about. I don't care about that. The point is you don't seem to have learned anything. Don't I? Well, you're quite wrong there. I've learned plenty tonight, and you don't want me to tell you what I've learned, I hope. When I look back on tonight, when I think of what I was feeling when the five of us sat down to dinner at that table. Yes, Do you remember what you said to Gerald and me after dinner when you were feeling so pleased with yourself? You told us that a man has to make his own way and that we weren't to take any notice of these cranks who tell us that everybody has to look after everybody else. As if we were all mixed up together. Do you remember? Yes. Then one of those cranks walked in. The inspector. I didn't notice you told him that it's every man for himself. Key bit this, isn't it? About learning lessons. Sheila even directly accuses her parents. You've learned nothing. You've not learned your lesson. Burling's just concerned about, oh, I'm not going to get my knighthood now. Oh, there's going to be a scandal now. Oh, we're going to look bad. All my efforts to push us up the social ladder are wasted. That's how he feels hurt. Think of the fallout from this. His daughter's been cheated on, we found out, by her fiancé, and their engagement has been dropped. Eric was going to have a grandchild. The child and the mother are now dead. And all he cares about is his knighthood. And I'm the one who loses out. I'm the one who's going to suffer. Yeah? I'm the one who'll suffer, he says. Selfish? I think you might be able to say that. Just a bit. Thank you. Okay. Wow. The kids have learned something, haven't they? Sheila definitely and massively has learned her lesson, and she's been consistently like that from the start. Eric certainly agreeing with Sheila on all this, isn't he? So I think it's fair to say that Eric realises this was wrong. Burling and Mrs. Burling, no. In fact, didn't Burling say a moment ago about how, we've done nothing to be ashamed of, yeah? Anyway, Sheila, I've been consistently saying to you, don't you think Sheila's the smartest out of all these people? She learns a lesson straight away. As a result, the inspector treats her much better than the others. Because you're easy with me, I'm easy with you. And she also, she is going to show her smartness again here. So Eric says, yeah, remember that speech you made as the inspector was coming in? Yeah? So they came past the bomb, Miss Tompkins. Absolutely. Tasty. So Sheila, smart, steps to Eric. Is that when the inspector came, just after Father had said that? Yes, what of it? Now what's the matter, Sheila? It doesn't matter much now, of course, but was he really a police inspector? Well, if he wasn't, it makes a devil of a lot. Makes all the difference. No, it doesn't. Don't talk rubbish. Of course it does. Well, it doesn't to me, and it oughtn't to you either. Don't be childish, Sheila. I'm not being. If you want to know, it's you two who are being childish. Trying not to face the facts. I won't have that sort of talk. Any more of that, and you leave this room. That'd be terrible for her, wouldn't it? Going anyhow in a minute or two, but don't you see, if all that's come out tonight is true, then it doesn't much matter who it was who made us confess. It was true, wasn't it? That's what's important. And it's what we did that's important, not whether a man is a police inspector or not. He was our police inspector, all right. That's what I mean, Eric. But if it's any comfort to you, and it isn't to me, I have an idea, and I had it all along vaguely, that there was something curious about him. He never seemed like an ordinary police inspector. You're right, I felt it too. Didn't you? Well, I must say his manner was quite extraordinary, so rude and assertive. And look at the way he talked to me, telling me to shut up and so on. He must have known I was an ex-Lord Mayor and a magistrate and so forth. Oh, give it a rest, Grandad. Besides, the way he talked, you remember? I mean, they don't talk like that. I've had dealings with dozens of them. All right, but it doesn't make any real difference, Of course it does. No, sorry. Of course it does. Sorry. No, Sheila's right, it doesn't. That's comic, that is, coming from you. You're the one it makes most difference to. You've confessed to theft, and now he knows all about it, and he can bring it out in the inquest. And then, if necessary, carry it to court. He can't do anything to your mother and Sheila and me, except perhaps make us look a bit ashamed of ourselves in public. But as for you, he can ruin you. And yet you tell us it doesn't make any real difference. Makes all the difference. Can I just make a point here? Again, this is key for this idea of learning the lesson. Sheila says, Was he really a police inspector? He didn't really act like a police inspector. And remember, all the way through, Sheila said, remember, she walked up to him and said, there's something I don't understand about you. And the inspector said, there's no reason why you should. Is she right? Is there something going on? Is he not a police inspector? But the thing is that Eric and Sheila say it doesn't really matter because they have done all these things to that girl. They are guilty. Whereas Burling and Mrs. Burling, of course, their attitude is, makes all the difference. All we care about, we don't care if that girl's dead, really. What we care about is the public scandal. We don't want our reputations damaged. So if he wasn't really a police inspector, maybe we can get away with this. And Burling says to Eric, doesn't he, you're the one who's got the most to lose here, because you're, actually, think about this, the only one who's actually committed a crime in all of this. Yeah. Unless we're going to try and make a case that driving a girl to suicide is a crime. But I'm no lawyer. That ain't going to stand up in court, though, is it, really? We were all a bit unpleasant to her. Morally, they're guilty. But in terms of criminal acts, the only one, really, is that Eric actually stole money in order to give it to her. So, okay. Alright, it's now a couple of minutes. We'll finish this tomorrow as well. All he did really was to make us confess. We hardly ever told him anything he didn't know. Did you notice that? That's nothing. He had a bit of information left by the girl and made a few smart guesses. But the fact remains that if you hadn't talked so much, he'd really have had little to go to. Go on, sorry. He looks angrily at the others. And really, when I come to think of it, why you all had to go letting everything come out like that beats me. It's alright talking like that now, but he made us confess. He certainly didn't make me confess, as you call it. I told him quite plainly that I thought I'd done no more than my duty. Oh, Mother. Thing is, you allowed yourselves to be bluffed. Yeah, bluffed. Oh, really, Arthur? No, not you, my dear. But these two. That fellow obviously didn't like us. He was prejudiced from the start. Probably a socialist or some sort of crank, yeah? Like Priestley. He talked like one. And then instead of standing up to him, you let him bluff you into talking about your private affairs. You ought to have stood up to him. Well, I didn't notice you standing up to him. No, because by that time you admitted you'd been taking money. What chance had I after that? I was a fool not to have insisted upon seeing him alone. That wouldn't have worked. Of course it wouldn't. Really, from the way you children talk, you might be wanting to help him instead of us. Now just be quiet so your father can decide what we ought to do. And she, brilliant this, looks expectantly at Burling. The old-fashioned sexist, the man of the house will sort this now. He's thick as two short planks, isn't he? I mean, oh, yeah. I just quite enjoy this. This is a bit of a sort of, can I do it in a Boris Johnson voice? The only thing stopping me is that I can't do a Boris Johnson voice. I'll give it a stab anyway. So he's now dubious. They're looking at him. Give us the answer. Give us the information we need. Give us the lead. And he hasn't got anything in his head, does he? He said, yes, well, we'll have to do something and get to it quickly too. He's got a clue, is he? And the doorbell rings. They look up in alarm. Oh my God, what is this? Now who's this? Had I better go? No, Edna will go. I asked her to wait up to make her some tea. Edna. It might be Gerald coming back. Yeah, of course. I'd forgotten about him. It's Mr. Croft. Gerald appears. Edna's gone again. It's not fair. It's not fair. I like Edna. So then again, that exchange again. Sheila and Eric versus their parents. Burling saying he was just some socialist troublemaker then if he's not a police officer. Your mother, that we wasn't fooled and neither was I. Oh, righty. Did you come up with the idea that he's not a police inspector? I would have stood up for him, but you stupid idiots kept on confessing to everything. Not you, my dear wife. You didn't. So they're inventing their own little version of this now, aren't they? Where they stood up to the inspector, but the stupid kid has just spilled everything. Yeah, that's what happened there. I hope you don't mind me coming back. I had a special reason for doing so. When did that inspector go? Only a few minutes ago. He put us all through it. Sheila. Gerald might as well know. Now, we needn't bother him with all that stuff. Yeah, still keep our reputation safe. Don't let other people know about it. All right, but we're all in it, up to the neck. It got worse after you left. How did he behave? He was frightening. If you ask me, he behaved in a very peculiar and suspicious manner. The rude way he spoke to Mr. Burling and me, it was quite extraordinary. Why? You know something, what is it? That man wasn't a police officer. What? Are you certain? I'm almost certain. That's what I came back to tell you. Good lad. You asked about him, eh? Good lad. He's been cheating on your daughter. Good lad. Jeez. Yes, I met a policing sergeant I know down the road. I asked him about this Inspector Gould. Described the chap carefully to him. He swore there wasn't any Inspector Gould or anybody like him on the force here. You didn't tell him? No, I passed it all off by saying I'd been having an argument with somebody. But the point is, this sergeant was dead certain they hadn't any inspector at all like the chap who came here. By jingo, a fake! Didn't I tell you? No, you didn't. Didn't I say I couldn't imagine a real police inspector talking like that to us? Well, you were right. There isn't any such inspector. We've been had. I'm going to make certain of this. Oh, Burling, man of action. Come on, son. What are you going to do? Ring up the Chief Constable, Colonel Roberts. Careful what you say, dear. Of course. Now. Let's have a glimpse into the past. This is over 100 years ago, I guess. By jingo, indeed. Absolutely. By jingo. Top hell. Right. Okay, youngsters. Time to blow your mind. Not many people had phones in those days. They were a luxury item. Obviously, no mobile phones. Every phone was connected. It was static in your house. And the phone lines, well, basically how it would work was those phone lines would crisscross, the town, the country, but you wouldn't dial the number. You would call the inspector. I've got inspectors on the mind. You would call the operator. So you pick up your phone, you don't have to dial, and the operator's there, and you'll have looked up the number. And you tell the operator the number you want, and then there will be telephone exchanges all around the country, and the operators are all sitting in there, and when they are told this, get this, they'll get a cable with a jack on either end, they'll go to the hole, which is your phone line, plug it in, and then they'll go to the hole, which is the other phone line, the person you're calling, and plug that in, and they would make that physical connection, and then your phone call would come through and start ringing on the other side. Wow, isn't that amazing? The Wrexham telephone exchange, by the way, you can still see it. Not now. Stay at home, stay safe. But on Grosvenor Road, so you know where the St Mary's Cathedral is? So imagine you're standing with your backs to St Mary's Cathedral, and there's that long road down there. On the right-hand side of that road is a dentist, and then there's the mosque. If you keep going down that road, about 2/3 of the way, 3/4 of the way down, there's a building on your right, and it still has written on it Wrexham Telephone Exchange. It's quite a big building. It's not the telephone exchange obviously anymore, but that sort of stuff doesn't exist. I can't remember what it is. Is it a BT office, or they kept it? I can't remember. I'm not going to go and find out, obviously. Damon, yeah, absolutely. Telephone lines in those days were much less reliable. And if you think about it, that was a local thing. There was a much more complicated thing you had to do if you wanted to call across the country. Like telephone exchanges all linking together. So yeah. I mean, we're not talking about a fantastic sort of setup, but that's how it used to work. And I'm sure it was still open when I was a little kid, so that would have been like 70s. God, I'm old. So, yeah. But then they changed that then to the fact that, yeah, exactly, Don, yeah. You're bringing lots of extra complications in, aren't you? They changed the system, basically, where all those lines just linked up anyway, and you're much more able to directly call somebody. Wow, isn't that mad? So he's now, I'm sorry, just a bit of an aside, he's now making the phone call by he's speaking to the operator. I'll finish out of this little bit here, but it's important. So he's at the phone now. So he goes to the phone and he's now speaking to the operator on the phone. Oh, that's true. Oh, God, yeah, that's true. Miss, yeah, operators could listen in. And they absolutely didn't. In 1912, only the rich would have a phone. No question about that. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, operators could listen into you, couldn't they? That's absolutely right. And you sound like this, like interference sometimes from other calls. Yeah. Yeah, Dylan, no need to get information, to get permission there now. Mind you, oh no, I'm not getting into politics. Okay, he's on the phone to the operator. Bromley 5721. I was going to do this anyhow, he says to them while he's waiting. I've had my suspicions all along, and now he's been connected to Colonel Rob to the railway station. Railway station, police station. Roberts, please. Mr. Arthur Burling here. Ah, Roberts, Burling. Sorry to ring you up so late, but can you tell me if an Inspector Goole has joined your staff lately? Goole. Goole. A new man. I see. Yeah. Well, that settles it. No, just little arguments we're having here. Good night. Puts the phone down and looks at the other. There's nobody who even looks like the man who came here. That man definitely wasn't a police inspector at all. As Gerald says, we've been had. Bum, bum, bum. On that bombshell, let's finish for the day. Overrun by about 5 minutes to normal. Sorry about that, chaps. Finish it off tomorrow. I'll leave the post stream on for a little bit as well. We got a little history of telecommunications, and in many ways that's the important thing to take away from this session, isn't it? No, it's not. Is there? I don't know. I'll give you a fab telephone fact. This was so much more impressive when I started teaching. When I started teaching, there was this wonderful teaching aid called The Simpsons. Everybody watched The Simpsons. And it was brilliant then. Now, it's rubbish now. After series 9, pretty much the rubbish. First 9 series, possibly the best thing ever made on television. And, I mean, it's true that there was a Simpsons scene to illustrate every single thing that you wanted to. And so often in teaching, I tend to try and compare one thing to another to help people understand it. And The Simpsons was wonderful, and everyone watched it. So I guess now people don't watch The Simpsons as much because most of it's rubbish. But I'll give you the example anyway. Mr. Burns, who owns the nuclear power plant, whenever he answers the phone, he always says, "Ahoy, hoy." Ahoy, hoy. Now, fab fact, Thomas Edison, first developer of the phone, Alexander Graham Bell, the first developer of the phone, came up with that phrase because he thought that's how everybody should answer the phone. So that he thought that would be the formal way that everyone would answer the phone. Why do you do that from now on if anyone ever phones you? Ahoy, hoy. That would be really excellent. If you've never seen Mr. Burns, you think I'm having some sort of breakdown. Mind you, to be fair, whether you've seen The Simpsons or not, bloke playing with toilet rolls for half an hour a day. Yeah, I'm having a breakdown. I'll put the post stream on for a second, chaps. And it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you all. And I'll see you again tomorrow for the final bit. And maybe to help me set up my poll on what I'll read next.